Before the Flood, The Fall of Atlantis, by Matson. Chapter 7. The Cost of Flame and Wind. The week of mandated healing in the advancing warriors' barracks of Ring. 7 unfolded like a fevered dream suspended between violence and judgment, a fragile interlude filled with the sharp sense of Lysandros' Pharmacia salves, the low murmurs of prayers offered in defiance of the surrounding darkness, and the unrelenting, oppressive weight of Atlantis itself pressing in from every direction. The chamber's thick stone walls, reinforced by geomancy workings that hummed faintly with residual power, could not keep out the distant screams from sacrificial altars in neighboring rings or the pervasive incense and blood reek that drifted on the night breezes. Lysandros, lean and scholarly, even in exhaustion, worked tirelessly with his satchel of glass vials and dried herbs. His remedies, secret blends drawn from the order of Moak's hidden knowledge, knit Stelios' cracked ribs beneath thick poultices that smelled of bitter willow bark, chamomile, and rare minerals ground from Eastern trade. The big tank's barrel chest rose and fell more easily, but his bones still creaked with every shift of his massive frame, growing denser and more brittle as the corruption of repeated altering invocations exacted its slow, inevitable toll. The ritual scars across his torso pulsed with faint inner light when he tested his strength, a reminder that the body failed exactly as the ancient covenants warned. Pyrrhon's fresh charring from the first culling had been cooled with soothing balms and bound in clean linen strips, the black edges of his skin no longer weeping clear fluid, but still cracking painfully whenever he moved with his usual reckless energy. His internal heat never fully subsided, simmering like an ember buried in ash that threatened to reignite and consume him from within at the slightest provocation. Boreas' poisoned lungs received thinning drafts and restorative vapors that allowed him to draw breath without immediate agony. Yet the dark, metallic flecks that appeared on whatever cloth he pressed to his lips served as a grim, persistent reminder that prolonged use of aromancy was slowly turning the very air he commanded into a toxin against his own body. Leon's own glowing scars, the luminous tributaries left by Kyon's covenant, had dimmed from their immediate post-battle intensity, but refused to fade entirely. They now reached well past his elbows, aching with a phantom heat that flared unexpectedly in quiet moments or during restless sleep, leaving him waking with the olive branch token clutched so tightly in his fist that the wood bit into his palm. Each day, the 5 companions trained lightly in the enclosed yard behind the barracks, their movements careful but purposeful under the watchful eyes of arena guards. They refined coordinated strikes that had carried them through the first round. Leon's aerial glides and flaming projectiles covering Stelios' frontal assaults. Lysandros' powders and illusions creating openings for precise strikes. Pyrrhon's area-clearing flames controlling the battlefield, and Boreas' winds providing mobility, shields, and suffocating vacuums. In the quiet hours between sessions when the sun dipped below the concentric rings and torches were lit, Leon led them in simple but fervent prayers drawn from the old songs of the line of Seth, words preserved by the faithful remnant in hidden places across the world. The olive branch token, still warm and carrying the faint life of the Calliste groves, rested against his chest like a promise. The remnant note slipped under their chamber door on the 3rd night. The remnant prays without ceasing. 2 more rounds until the king. Obedience endures where power devours. Hold fast to the vision. We see you, winged one. Served as a tangible anchor, a spark of hope in the suffocating spiritual night. A veiled figure, moving like a ghost among the outer ring's shadows, had delivered it, their eyes meeting Leon's briefly in silent solidarity before vanishing into the torchlit avenues. It bolstered them all, a quiet defiance against the depravity that surrounded the island. Chained victims dragged to altars for biomancy rituals, children born of forced covenants, showing early monstrous traits. Scholars in Pharmacia halls brewing elixirs that fractured minds while promising power. Yet temptation never slept. Kyon pressed harder against the veil in the hidden dimensions of Leon's blood during moments of exhaustion or doubt. Your friends slow the pack, pup. Their frailties and mounting costs will drag you down when the king challenges. Embrace me fully. Greater power awaits, unburdened by their weaknesses. The throne of Ring 7 could be yours in glory. Leon pushed the whispers down each time with gritted teeth, gripping the olive branch token until his knuckles whitened and the pure warmth pushed back the hunger. The vivid dream from the creator remained his unshakable anchor, the 10 concentric rings cracking and sinking beneath the waves, the command to defeat Poseidon and cast the sinful city into the sea. The body failed. Obedience did not. He would not trade the narrow path of divine mandate for the broad road of easy power and pride. Now, as the second round of the Battle of the Rings dawned under a blood-red sky that seemed to bleed in anticipation, the surviving teams marched once more into the colossal arena of Ring 7. The sand had been raked by slaves overnight, but still bore dark, stubborn stains from the first culling, as if the very ground itself thirsted insatiably for more lifeblood. 30,000 spectators packed the tiered limestone seats to capacity, their collective roar rising like a living, ravenous beast hungry for fresh spectacle and death. Banners of dyed wool, crimson for the lifeblood demanded by the watchers, stark black for the encroaching spiritual night, snapped and cracked in the hot, dry winds, funneled down from the ring's outer marble walls. Vendors threaded through the crowds with hoarse voices, hawking roasted meats dripping fat, watered wine in clay cups, and cheap amulets inscribed with futile invocations. The Egyptian Nephilim giants lounged in their opulent luxury boxes high above the fray, their colossal 12 to 14-foot forms casting long, ominous shadows across the tiers. Crystal growths sparked with stolen lightning, malachite scales shimmered with inner fire, multifaceted eyes whirred and clicked, water rippled beneath seductive skin, and crocodile jaws clacked in cruel amusement. Their booming, mocking laughter rolled down like thunder from false gods, jests about Poseidon the runt, and his failing spawn audible even over the din. King Gorgothon, the petrifying Nephilim ruler of the ring, reclined upon his monstrous throne of fused earth and wind-sculpted marble at the far end, his body a living horror of corruption. Joints creaked audibly with every subtle shift, stone-like skin cracking faintly, eyes gleaming with sadistic interest as they fixed upon Leon's group. The priest in flowing blood-red robes ascended the central dais, his voice amplified by hidden Mancy workings to boom like judgment across every tier. Survivors of the first culling face the second trial. Greater foes and harsher tests await those who would claim thrones. Let the gifts of Pharmacia, altering and Mancy prove their chosen ones. Let flesh demonstrate its inevitable failure once more, for the glory of the Watchers and the hunger of Ra'av. The great horn, a massive polished conch shell the size of a grown man's torso, sounded its deep, mournful blast. The signal for slaughter. Chaos erupted across the blood-stained sand like a cataclysm unleashed. This round's opponents were no longer green bloodline hopefuls, but hardened veterans who had clawed their way through the initial cull. Mixed teams blending Pharmacia mind-breakers, who wove slow-acting curses and mind-rotting illusions. Mancy elementalists channeling devastating lightning, fire and wind, and altering brutes whose bodies had warped into grotesque, multi-limbed monstrosities through repeated invocations. Leon's team charged forward in tight formation, but the synergy felt strained by lingering injuries, fresh grief from training reflections, and the growing awareness of each member's mounting personal costs. Stelios anchored the front line as always, invoking his unnamed goof watcher with a deep, guttural roar that seemed to shake the air itself. His skin transformed instantly, hardening into living bronze armor that gleamed dully under the harsh sunlight and flickering torches. His massive shield absorbed the brunt of an opening Pharmacia poison barrage, the metal corroding and bubbling visibly on impact, but holding firm against the assault. His iron-studded club swung in wide, crushing arcs, shattering the shoulder of a Mancy lightning caller in a spray of blood and splintered bone. "For the Creator and the vision he has given," he bellowed, his voice like grinding millstones, loyalty burning like an unquenchable fire in his eyes. Yet the impact jarred his heavier frame, bones creaking ominously like shifting rock. He grimaced through the pain but stood firm, absorbing blow after blow so his brothers could strike. Lysandros danced at the midline like a scholarly shadow, his lean frame moving with precise economy despite the toll on his mind. Pinches of shimmering powder flew from his fingers with deadly accuracy. He thickened the air around a charging four-armed altering horror, turning what should have been an unstoppable, multi-limbed assault into a sluggish, stumbling lurch that Stelios exploited with a devastating overhead smash. Illusions of shifting sand and phantom enemies confused another foe, causing the warrior to strike at nothing and leave himself open to a fatal thrust. Lysandros's sharp eyes calculated openings amid the chaos, but his lips moved constantly now in silent debate with phantoms only he could perceive. Not real. The voices lie again. Focus on the true path, the Creator's will. The fractures in his psyche deepened visibly under the pressure of repeated Pharmacia use, memories blurring with hallucinations. Pyrrhon threw himself into the fray with the hot-tempered, reckless abandon that had always defined him, flames dancing wildly at his fingertips before roaring outward in hungry bursts. Fireballs engulfed entire clusters of enemies, transforming proud warriors into screaming, flailing human torches whose cloaks and hair ignited instantly. Walls of roaring flame cut off retreats and filled the arena with the sickening stench of burning flesh and hair. "Burn in the purifying fire of judgment," he crowed, his laughter wild and fierce, even as fresh black charring crept further across his forearms and neck. But an enemy aeromancer's vicious countergust fanned his own inferno back upon him. Charred skin split open with audible cracks. He screamed in agony but pressed forward, his life force visibly eroding as the internal heat intensified and sweat sizzled on contact with his skin. Boreas wove the winds with his characteristic calm calculation, long fingers gesturing subtly to command the air. Cutting gusts sliced open arteries and knocked warriors off balance. Protective shields of compressed air deflected volleys of projectiles, and focused updrafts granted momentary height advantages for strikes. Yet each working extracted a harsher toll. His breath grew more labored, coughs racking his wiry frame and leaving dark metallic blood flecks on his lips. "The air fights me, resists my call," he gasped between commands, his pale gray eyes determined despite the pain. Leon invoked Kyon with measured but growing intensity from the center of their formation, bright blue flames roaring to life along his forearms and shoulders. Superhuman strength surged through his limbs, speed quickened his reactions, and radiant heat seared the air around him. Massive wings of living blue flame unfurled from his shoulders, allowing powerful glides and leaps that let him dominate the battlefield from above. Condensed projectiles of blue fire lanced outward, melting armor and cooking flesh in bursts of superheated vapor. The crowd's chant swelled to a deafening crescendo. "The winged dog of Tanaju, Kyon's champion, blue flame rises." The power flooding his veins felt exhilarating, almost divine in its glory. But Kyon's whispers cut deeper than ever into his mind. See how they falter and weaken around you, pup. Their frailties and costs drag you down. Leave them behind. Claim the power and the throne alone. True dominion awaits the one who embraces me fully. A Pharmacia curse nearly took root on Leon's shield arm, flesh threatening to blacken and rot from within, before he burned it away in a controlled burst of blue flame. An altering brute with stone-like hide and extra limbs grappled Stelios in a crushing hold, cracking the bronze armor with audible groans. Lysandros' targeted contact poison finally felled the giant, flesh rotting visibly, but the cumulative toll on the team mounted with every clash. The battle reached its desperate, heartbreaking peak in the blood-soaked center of the arena. A coordinated assault from a particularly vicious Mancy Pharmacia hybrid team summoned crackling arcs of lightning and mind-rotting vapors that induced hallucinations of loved ones turning to monsters, sowing panic and self-doubt. Pyrrhon met the threat with characteristic recklessness and fiery courage, summoning a massive wall of roaring flame to shield his brothers. The inferno towered higher than any he had manifested before, consuming enemies in waves of screaming, flailing agony as skin bubbled, hair ignited, and armor melted. The heat vitrified wide swaths of sand into glassy, razor-sharp traps that cut into the feet of survivors. But the enemy Aeromancer countered with vicious precision, gusts fanning Pyrrhon's own flames back upon him in a catastrophic backlash. His fire turned traitor, charring him from the inside out. He fell to his knees in the sand, skin cracking and blackening across his torso and face, eyes wide with excruciating pain, yet burning with defiance. For the vision, for the Creator, burn them all. One final explosive fireball cleared the immediate threat, reducing a cluster of foes to charred husks before Pyrrhon collapsed lifeless onto the sand. The crowd roared in bloodthirsty approval at the spectacular death. Grief and righteous rage ignited something primal and holy in Leon. His wings beat furiously, blue flames flaring brighter than ever as he dove through the swirling chaos toward Boreas' position. The Aeromancer had summoned a powerful protective whirlwind to repel a fresh swarm of attackers threatening Stelios and Lysandros, saving them at tremendous personal cost. The effort drained his already poisoned breath completely. Boreas suffocated on the very air he commanded, body convulsing violently as an enemy blade found its mark in the momentary distraction. "Leon, obey the call. The vision," were his final words, carried on a dying breeze that whispered across the sand before the wind failed entirely and his form stilled forever. Only three remained amid the carnage: Leon, Lysandros, and Stelios. Bloodied, grieving but unbowed, and driven by deeper purpose. Leon's scars glowed like beacons of both divine power and terrible warning. They fought on in a perfect, desperate synergy forged in shared loss and faith. Stelios tanked the heaviest remaining blows, his bronze skin indenting deeply under the assault, bones creaking like shifting rock under unbearable strain. Lysandros' powders, illusions, and emergency salves created vital openings even as hallucinations plagued his every move. Leon dominated from air and ground, wings carrying him in lethal arcs, blue flames turning the tide with searing projectiles and empowered strikes that melted defenses and ended threats. A final cataclysmic aerial assault, wings fully extended, flames roaring with holy fury, ended the last major opponent, the warrior's body crumpling in a heap of melted armor and scorched flesh. The horn signaled the round's end at last. The surviving trio stood victorious but profoundly diminished, the bodies of Pyrrhon and Boreas lying nearby on the blood-soaked sand. The crowd's roar was thunderous and ecstatic, yet it tasted of ash and bitterness in Leon's mouth. King Gorgathon nodded slowly from his throne, his petrified fist tapping the armrest in apparent approval or calculation. The Egyptian giant's laughter boomed louder than ever from the luxury boxes. Two fewer weaknesses for the dog to carry. Flesh fails beautifully, exactly as the orders foretold. How long until the last three join their brothers in the dust? They limped from the arena as custom demanded, carrying the fallen comrades with solemn dignity. In the dim, torchlit barracks tunnel, grief settled over them like a physical shroud. Lysandros tended their wounds with trembling hands, his mind fractured further, eyes darting at unseen shadows as he mixed salves. Stelios, the protective older brother figure, wept openly for the first time in memory, tears cutting clean channels through the grime and blood on his face. They fought valiantly, for the vision. Boreas's winds saved us. Pyrrhon's fire cleared the way. I will carry their memory as I tank what comes next, brother. Leon knelt beside the bodies, blue flames extinguished but scars pulsing with inner light. He placed the olive branch token briefly on each fallen companion, whispering fervent prayers for their spirits. Why them, creator of all? Boreas, with his calm mastery of the winds that carried us across the great green. Pyrrhon, with his fierce fire that burned for justice. They gave everything in obedience. Yet I trust your path is just, and your mercy remains. Strengthen the three of us who remain for the trials ahead. Let not their sacrifice be in vain. Judgment comes, but hope endures. The week of healing loomed once more, heavier now with absence and fresh grief. Losses cut deep into the soul, carving hollows that power could not fill. But obedience endured. The path to challenging King Gorgathon had narrowed to a faithful trio. In the quiet of the chamber that night, as torches burned low and his remaining companions drifted into uneasy sleep, Leon stood alone at the narrow window slit overlooking the darkened arena. The blue glow of his scars softly illuminated the olive branch token held reverently in his palm. Far below, the sand lay dark and thirsty, waiting. King Gorgathon's throne loomed empty but ominous in the distance. The faithful remnant's prayers seemed to reach him on the faint night wind. "Strengthen us, Creator," he prayed silently. "Let not the mockery of false gods or the hunger of Kyon prevail. The flood draws near. Mercy remains for those who walk humbly. Judgment comes." The Egyptian giant's distant laughter still echoed faintly, but it no longer chilled him to the core. He had tasted further costs of power and chosen the narrow path again. The fall continued, step by painful step, through blood and loss toward divine obedience. All flesh is grass. The grass withers, but the word of the Creator endures forever. This has been an unabridged audio production of Before the Flood, The Fall of Atlantis, Chapter 7, The Cost of Flame and Wind, by Matson. All rights reserved by Matson, LLC. Copyright Matson, LLC 2026. If you enjoyed this production, please like, share, and subscribe. Available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Follow the author at Matson for updates. Links in the description.